this for Frank. Yeah, for Frank. Okay, good evening. This is the North Andover Board of Health meeting, September 28th, 2017. I call the meeting to order. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. No public hearings tonight. Next on the agenda, we have the approval of the meeting minutes.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes of the meeting from June 22nd. As I said earlier, very well written.
Do I have a second to the motion?
I second that.
Discussion? Okay. Everyone read it? Yes?
Yes.
Yes and yes. Okay. Yes. So let's vote. All those that approve of the meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good. It's unanimous. Meeting minutes are approved. We're not carrying over any old business. This is really a housekeeping meeting tonight. Originally, I spoke to Brian about, usually once a year we talk about septic and do a small septic presentation for people that are watching us who are new homeowners, but we're going to hold off and do a more thorough. We have a bit to go over tonight, so we're going to do a more comprehensive talk later on. A few months from now, at some point, we're going to do that. We're just not going to do it tonight. New business, Brian, you had department reports, which...
Yes, so I have in your packets, you have the department report from myself, and you also have the nurse's report that Caroline had sent out earlier. I just figured I'd run through this real quick just to give you guys, to go back a little bit. Larry and I had met with Caroline when she first started a couple months ago, and decided that we'd like to do more, and this is the little summary we talked about, we'd like to get more active in having people come in before the board, to have more things with like a lecture series. We want to start doing more department reports like this for you and the general public, so the health department knows, people know what the health department does, what we do on a regular basis, and how the office kind of works. So this is the first in many reports coming forward from the nurse, myself. I'm also going to have the inspector do one as well. So moving forward, we'll get 3 department reports for the different aspects of the department at each board meeting. I think that'll help keep you guys in the loop as to what's going on, and the public as well. So
That's good. And we'll be getting it by email, so you can file it and review it if you want to each month. And I just I think it's good. We've all, in some sense, have talked about this at the board as far as knowing more of what's happening. So we put it together, and I just think it's good that we're all going to be informed right up to date as to what's happening.
yes.
Yeah.
So monthly report from the director. It's myself. First one is Larry, Caroline, and myself met a couple months ago to discuss this and kind of get this thing moving. One of the things that I've talked about in the past that we're a member of is the regional coalition, which is, it's called the Greater Lawrence Public Health Coalition, which is funded by the CDC and the Department of Public Health at the state level to do emergency planning and emergency preparedness. They pay for trainings, they pay for supplies for clinics and for things that could happen down the road. And we have a storeroom and supply closet downstairs that has anything we would need to set up a full-scale mass vaccination clinic within 48 hours. So that's an explanation as to what this group is. So we have monthly meetings there with the state, with the regional coalition, and all of the partners. We also met with the Medical Reserve Corps, who we can tap into to get nursing and or medical volunteers whenever we need them for any type of clinics that we're doing or any type of emergency. I also met with the Health and Medical Coordinating Coalition, which is the level above that. That's more of a state level, and it's a Region 3, and that includes everything from local public health to nursing homes, long-term care facilities, hospitals, health clinics, health centers, things like that. So there's a whole bunch of different stakeholders in this larger group that meets also on a regular basis. The Region 3 HMCC Board of Governors meeting, I'm actually one of the executives on that board, and I represent public health with all of the other stakeholders involved. I also had a budget subcommittee meeting, which the money that comes from the CDC and the state filters through the HMCC and then goes to the local public health coalitions. So I've been elected to the executive board of that HMCC to represent public health all across Region 3, which is Eastern Massachusetts.
That's great.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What's the mission of that coalition? What's,
Communication and getting everybody on the same page. So your hospitals and your EMS, your emergency management directors, long-term care, nursing homes, everything, so that they're all involved in any type of emergency planning. So if there's a situation where a nursing home has to be evacuated, you have the different people involved in all the necessary steps to do that. Whether it's evacuating to a local hospital, or if there's any type of virus outbreak, bringing in local public health and the CDC and the State Department to bring in the vaccines and get those clinics set up. So it's just to have everybody meeting and communicating and bring in some of these other groups that have never done any type of emergency planning before. So,
so it's really about emergency preparation, not
correct.
ongoing chronic whatever.
And it's even just having connections in this type of a realm. So for instance, I had a gentleman from the Lawrence General Hospital call me up last month because he couldn't get in touch with the Lawrence Public Health nurse, and he had some questions. And so he called me because he knew me from these groups and said, what do I do? So it was just a situation with rabies, and they couldn't reach the public health department. The nurse has since left, so they didn't have anybody to reach out to for what their next step should be in terms of getting the bat tested and getting the family vaccinated, which is very common.
What communities are in Region 3?
There are probably about 80. So it's
Wow.
Eastern Massachusetts.
80?
Yeah, it's Eastern Massachusetts.
Wow.
So there are 5 regions in Massachusetts. Region 3 is literally like north of Boston to the seacoast to not central Mass, but going towards central Mass. So it's the whole upper eastern block of Massachusetts.
Now, you said rabies, and that we've had incidences of that before
Mm-hmm.
throughout the years, and we've had blackbirds, fallen birds, and so forth that have had, thought to have rabies.
Okay.
Now, with the bat, I believe what they did with the birds is they would take it to a vet, cut the head off, and then send it into the Department of Public Health. Isn't that what they do?
Exactly.
Yeah, I know, that's what I thought.
So yeah, it gets sent over to the state lab,
That's-
gets tested.
Yeah.
Are they still doing that? I had been
Rabies
told
test?
that
We
they
do that
had
on a
cut
yes.
back.
They
Yeah.
cut back on the West Nile virus for that. They stopped
The
doing
crows and the
Oh,
blue
that.
jays.
Crows, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Not Blue Jays, okay.
Yep. I had a meeting with the town manager for department heads, talked about just things going on in town. He tries to do these probably every quarter, just to sit down and see what's going on in the departments. I also met with Ray regarding Mass General Laws, Chapter 30B procurement laws, when we went through the flu vaccine orders this year. The flu vaccine, because we want the high dose this year, tripled in price. So it could have possibly triggered issues with 30B, which is the contract procurement laws. So we sat down and we got this figured out. There is actually a state contract that we purchased the vaccine under, which exempts us from 30B for this purchase. So that was a fun time, right? Yeah. Let's see. So I met with Eric about administrative stuff going on. We did went over a few things just going on in town. Department, that's a pretty standard operating procedure for us just to keep on the same page. I did also meet with town council regarding abandoned properties. We have a couple that we're eyeing. We've been working on a few already with the Attorney General's office to get these things into a receivership program. We want to start branching out and doing this more internally and on our own without involving the Attorney General's office because they are overwhelmed doing it all across the entire state, so they don't have the manpower to have these things move up as fast as we would like. So we're trying to figure out a ways to do it ourselves. So that's something that we've been working on. We had our Tobacco Control Advisory Board meeting this past month. We meet quarterly with them as well. We are renewing our contract with the Massachusetts Tobacco Control Program, which does be part of them. They do help us with the regulations, any enforcement hearings, they do compliance checks with us, and all that funding goes through the host community, which is Andover. And that does also, there's a large section up here in Region 3 for tobacco control.
And I had read that the state is looking at increasing the age to 21.
Correct. We've already done that locally.
Well, obviously.
Yes.
Any further input from the state? Because many of the communities throughout the Commonwealth have already done that, including all the big cities.
Yes.
So
The state's
what
looking to do it as a whole.
Any idea of the timeline?
It takes a lot longer to do it at the state level than it does at the local level. So that's why Charles Sabara will come out and help local boards rewrite and redraft their regulations to include things like that. So it's been very successful across the state individually, but the state does want to do it, and it is going to take some time, but they are working on it. I don't think they're getting too much pushback from any of the other communities that haven't done it yet, and I think it's a good thing to have it done across the state as a standard. One thing that we do here in town with the different departments is we hold technical review committees. So if a business or a development is coming into town, we try to get all the departments involved together to meet with the applicant ahead of time, so they know what's going to be expected, what their application is going to look like. We answer any questions they have moving forward, so they know what the process is going to be like and what any hurdles they may encounter moving forward. So that's really good. We could have a couple of those this month. It's good to see the applicants come in and just get all their questions answered and see what things are viable in their project. So we've got, actually, over the course, we have these every month. There's always projects coming in, developers coming in to see what they want to do. One of the big ones we had is an apartment building on High Street, coming in over by the mills. So there's a potential project going on there that we just met with them 2 weeks ago on, which is really good.
I think it's a good idea too, because I know we've run into situations where somehow the health department will be left out of the signature page that they've signed off on a particular project or during a certain phase of the project. And so this is good.
Yeah, so you tell them right up front, if it's going to be a restaurant, here's your food application. If you're going to be a housing complex, this is the stuff we look for rental units and apartments, this is what we want to see. And just give them a heads up as to what they're going to be, working with. So.
Just a question, when a restaurant opens up, do they usually have a food consultant, or do the restaurants just do it on their own?
They usually have a design consultant. You usually have to work with an architect or some type of designer to lay it out on AutoCAD. And
do they specialize in restaurant?
Yes, most architects are very well versed in the food code and the requirements of the plumbing codes and building codes as to what restaurants require in terms of grease traps and 3-bay sinks and things like that.
That's good.
Hot water heater sizes. So depending on the square footage of the restaurant dictates how big your water heater is, how much cold storage you have, how much dry storage you have, and those are calculations that you can pretty much find in the federal food code that are straightforward. It's just math. So yeah.
How much it will cost.
They can usually correlate it to how much you're going to spend in material finishes, labor, things like that as well. So it kind of helps you budget along. You know how many square feet of tile you have to buy, and FRP and stainless steel equipment. So yeah.
It's complicated. I've been involved in some of that throughout the years. Just being on the board and going out, but it is.
Yeah.
You have to do it right, and if you don't buy the right tile,
The health department gets mad.
you're in trouble.
Yeah, so we work with them on the material finishes and the planning stage to what they're going to put down on everything. I mean, we've had restaurants have come in with because they have some designers that want to make things look a certain way. So rough cut, wood doesn't really fly. It looks nice, and it's a trend, but you don't want that in any type of kitchen area or service area. So we always have fun with that kind of stuff.
Talking about wood, real quick, a relative of mine was a butcher, and the old-time butchers and the meat markets, they had these giant wooden blocks they cut all the raw meat on, and then they would just clean it at the end of the night, and then come in the next day, and that's what they used to do.
Hope they clean it well. Yep. Okay, so the next section is trainings. I attended a hoarding task force. It wasn't really a training, it was more of a working group. And sponsored by the Tewksbury Health Department with a couple of nonprofit groups that work with behavioral health issues and things like that. They came in and talked about it. It was more of discussing things that we've worked on in the past, things that they have going on currently, what these groups can offer to help with assistance in terms of, there was one of the groups that's actually based out of Lawrence that is more of a clearinghouse for resources. So finding out what these people need for resources and helping them get those resources.
How bad of a problem is that in North Andover, if at all?
It's in every town. Every single town across the country and across the state has issues with hoarding. Few and far between, but they are around, and you do experience it, and you do work with them, and you do have to get them the resources they need to help things get taken care of and cleaned up.
Hoarding
It's a
doesn't,
universal problem. You can go anywhere in the country, and if you look in papers or anything that has to do with circle what we do, you always can find something about it. And I know something happens about it in Newburyport, but I would be willing to bet if we did surveying around, you'd find a lot more of it than you'd even think.
Absolutely. It's
I mean,
pretty common.
we know about the ones that come to us somehow because of complaints or interactions or problems that arise because of first responders go in or spills over into neighbors somehow. But when you go around, if you sort of look around with an eye to certain things, you can, probably a pretty, I won't say lots of it, but it's,
There's definitely a few in town. I've worked with them before in the past. Some of them have done what they could to take care of it for the most part, clean up the outside, make it inside at least safe enough for emergency personnel. But it's a condition that will always reoccur and come back. So you get them to a certain point, and then our business is taken care of and we're done. So we close out that complaint, and then in a year or two, you get another one. It's the same person, same place.
Tom, on the hoarding, I'm not sure on this, besides the hoarding issue, we all know that you collect and store, is hoarding lack of cleanliness too? I don't know. Is that considered hoarding if it's a filthy, unsanitary environment?
There are different classifications and different conditions. Some people hoard animals. And everybody's heard about, the owner who's got 40 cats in their house, and that brings on a whole new set of problems. There are people that hoard just certain items. There are people that have tons of stuff in their house, don't throw anything away, but it's spotless, as spotless as it can be. There are people that have what's called squalor, which is your perishables, and animal and human perishables,
Yeah.
let's just say. So there are different classifications, different criteria, and there's a scale that has been being worked on to rate from a number, basically. And like I said, there are clean hoarders who they store computers. They've got 100 computers in their living room. They want to fix them. And then people that have everything.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything and everything. So we do see that from time to time. So that was a good task force, good working group just to discuss different things that people are doing, things that we're working on, cases that we've had, cases that are current in some of the towns that were there. Just to use everybody as a sounding board to get ideas and maybe some solutions. We did a Google Calendar training to learn how to do everything on Google Calendar, which was, fun, right? And I did attended a foodborne illness investigations update seminar, sponsored by MHOA, which is the Massachusetts Health Officers Association. They are redoing and revamping and revising the investigation procedures that were established back in 1997. So that was the first edition, and they're working on the second edition now. So getting a little bit more up to date in terms of technologies and tracking and laboratory capabilities to kind of move things into the next century, I would say.
20 years later.
Yes. And then just some inspections that I've done. I've done some of these septic inspections over the past few weeks. I've done a couple of food inspections, just on some follow-up things for construction and a design layout meeting. Dealing with a noise complaint over at Market Basket that happened. This is the second one we've had for the trucks and the deliveries, disturbing the neighbors on Waverly Road, because this has been going on for many, many years. So we're gonna try to work with Market Basket to get this taken care of. Reviews, I did 4 septic reviews, did a couple of food reviews. We've got approximately, I didn't have the number correct, but approximately temporary food vendors came in for some of the events we've had recently. We have a soccer tournament coming up in town here, so all that stuff's been processed and taken care of. Administration,
Brian,
reviewed.
do you know, I've seen more coming out almost every week. How many of the, I don't know if they're a permit, but for the farmer's market, how many food, let's call them permits, have been issued for that? That seems like it's going great guns.
Yes, we started this back in, I want to say, April and May, getting the applications in for the food vendors, for the people selling and preparing food to sell at the farmer's market. We haven't gotten an updated list in a while, but
I can get it for you, John.
yeah.
I don't want a list. I mean, is it a dozen? Is it, I have to admit, I haven't been there yet, so.
We've probably had
The
about a
pictures I've
good
seen, it looks like
20.
it's 20?
Yeah, had a good 20 food vendors.
That's a great start for a
Yeah,
first
and
year
it's
of that.
been very well attended.
popular. I can't shop for food, I know so many people there. But yeah, I'm here to shop for food, nice to see you.
Yeah. It's been great. I've been several times, I've inspected several times. It's actually going very well, which is good.
That's wonderful.
So,
Frank, you should run for an elected office.
I'm gonna recommend the fish guy. I've
fish
gotten
guy.
swordfish, I've gotten haddock, I've gotten sea scallops.
We've heard-
Everything's been
You've gotten-
fantastic.
You've gotten
Yes.
down, that's pretty good.
I think it's Roberto.
Yeah.
He's Roberto's Seafood, and he's out of Saugus. Awesome.
Yeah,
It's
so,
It's a beautiful market.
It's, recommend stopping by Roberto.
yep, fantastic. So that's good. So yes, we've reviewed 7 out of 5 reports that have been submitted this month. Reviewed 50 food inspection reports submitted from Sweet Safe. And then just working with Tony on the general invoicing, vaccine procurement, some trash truck administration items with the police department and getting them out there and trying to enforce the placard policy. And then just in general, handling resident complaints, requests, inquiries, general customer service at the counter. We always have people and contractors come in looking at building files and septic files, things like that. That's ongoing. Animal control this month, we've tested 1 bat and 1 cat for rabies. We did have 1 family get vaccinated because of exposure. And general correspondence with TEC, Wheelabrator and GLSD, animal control on all of the bite reports and things like that. We do have TEC lined up for next month, as well as Wheelabrator to come in to talk about just overall monitoring and things like that. So I did send out an email. and
TEC is
The inspector contractor that we
Yes,
have.
yep.
So the
four-wheeler grader?
four-wheeler.
Yes. They're our third-party consultant that we use to monitor all the stack testing, and they do that quarterly. And they've also been monitoring the Ash House reconstruction project, and that's been ahead of schedule, and they've been fantastic. So,
Brian, I don't know if you plan to talk about the tour that we had of Wheelabrator.
I think we'll talk about that next month with TEC and Gary when they come in to talk about their stuff.
It was very good.
Yes, it was a fantastic tour, so. And then mosquito control, obviously, you know, we had a positive West Nile virus this past month. We did the press release, coordinated the targeted spray and the quadrant spray. and overall correspondence with them through that whole process and the additional testing and things like that. I am working on a little project as dictated by the town manager, who wants to do a comprehensive inspection program with all the town departments that we can get together to go out there and do every building, every unit in the grounds. Because they're taking up a lot of staff time, as you guys are well aware, of ongoing complaints and things like that. So in his department head meeting, he asked us to get together as department heads and figure out what we can do and to get a whole comprehensive inspection process going, everything.
Every inch of the whole place?
Yep. And the building department they do inspections, usually on a 5-year basis, but in the building code, it allows them to increase that up to annual inspections, where you do full fire, building, you can include health, police, but to go through and do every unit, every building, and just start working with them on getting everything fixed. So that's something that I started with the building commissioner to get this up and running. We did schedule a meeting. It's October 11th with some of the department heads to come up with a game plan and start scheduling. It's going to take a while. I mean, you're talking 50 buildings, 12 units each building.
How many extra personnel did he authorize for you?
We'll have to work on that one next. But we're going to sit down and figure out how long it's going to take, how many units we can do in one day, and then start scheduling out those over time. You have to obviously inform Royalcrest as to which building you're going to do, and then they have to in turn inform the residents. I don't know if they'll have to do certified mail or not, but I have to inform the residents they're going to be entering the units and get either permission or just notice that on this day we will be entering your unit with the town officials to do a safety inspection. So we'll see what happens with that, but we're trying to get that scheduled and taken care of. So it's going to be a long, ongoing project, I believe, and then countless orders to correct after that, I'm assuming.
Well, they finished the drainage around those
Yes.
apartment
Yep.
buildings that we
Oh, yeah, that was
talked
done,
about earlier in the year.
yeah, that was done this spring.
Okay.
All of them?
The ones that we mandated, yes, yes.
The ones that we mandated?
Yeah, those were the 2 buildings. So that, yeah, those drains were put in. Took them a little bit longer than the 6 weeks they had talked about, but they ran into some problems with one of the buildings in terms of the foundation. It had been piecemealed and patchworked years and years and years ago, that when they excavated around the foundation, the initial plan they had to do the drainage wouldn't work because the bottom, the footings were at different elevations around the foundation. So they had to go back to the drawing board and redesign the entire perimeter drain for that building. So that took a couple extra weeks, but they did it and they took care of it.
That's what happens when you build a complex like that on a P-plug.
Exactly. So, yeah, that was taken care of. So that's been underway. And then we did a...
Brian, to what level, I mean, I've been in there a couple of times lately, to what level of inspection are you gonna do things? I mean, I could envision that being a,
That's something that we have to figure out as a group. I'm thinking it probably won't be the full comprehensive 1-hour inspection, which usually a housing inspection can take. When you start going through everything with a fine comb, this is going to be more bigger ticket items. We're going to look for chronic dampness. We're going to look for, obviously, the smoke detectors and carbon dioxide detectors, make sure those are up and running. Your plumbing fixtures, make sure those are okay. Walls, floors, ceilings, things like that. We might not test every single window to see if it opens up easily without excessive force, but we'll probably pop a few of those open and just kind of go through the bigger issues and see what we see. So I'm thinking maybe 20, 25 minutes per unit versus an hour, just to expedite the whole process. And then with building and fire there as well, they'll also do their things. And I don't know if we'll actually take the temperature of every faucet, but we might hit one in the unit just to see how hot the water is. There has been issues in the past with the water being excessively hot, which obviously you don't want because it will burn people and children, so.
The dampness has been, the apartments in the lower elevation.
Yes.
Any problems this year? Because haven't heard much or anything at all.
Not since the
For the
ones we
first
have
time in
them
a
fixed.
long, long time.
I think we've probably gotten most of the buildings to be properly drained. I think the last 2 we hit this spring probably helped at least get those, 8 units from filing complaints every, month. So they've done more than half of the buildings so far. There are probably still more that we have to have them do, but we haven't found them yet. So maybe this comprehensive inspection will help locate which of the other problem buildings that need to get done sooner rather than later.
Not to drag this on, but there are all kinds of incidentals you could run across and just enter an apartment. If you're gonna go there when the college students are there, and I'm just thinking, when you talk about hoarding, the one I was in, early, this summer,
I remember. Yep.
you walked into a place and there was hoarding of basically food boxes. So when the police or the ambulance arrived, they opened the door and there were like clouds of flies in the place. So that's when they called me. They weren't willing to enter the place. I mean, I hope you got a lot of time on your hands.
I don't.
You pick up a lot of dust when you walk in.
Yeah. So we're gonna see how it goes. I mean, it's a first attempt to try to get something like this taken care of. I'm sure between Michelle and myself and the building department and the other people that we'll have involved can schedule it out so that it will take some time, but we'll get it done. And we'll go from there. We'll see what type of box Pandora has over there and see what we open up. So last thing on the administration is I did have a DPH conference call with, we are in the process of hiring a new regional staff person for our local coalition to be the staff planner. They help us with accomplishing all of the tasks that we get associated with the funding. So for emergency dispensing site plans and things like that, the planner helps you facilitate all this. So we're in the process of hiring somebody to be the regional staff planner, which is good. And then the last one.
Oh,
That's
we
a
had a
separate
talk later.
region. That's a separate region than the HMCC?
The HMCC is the bigger umbrella.
Mhm.
The local coalition is just the public health
Okay.
portion of that
All
big
right.
umbrella.
Brian, one of these items
And-
is mosquito control. It's obviously late in the year, and the problem should be subsiding, but, boy, this weather, it's been hot.
Surprisingly,
What's happening with these mosquitoes?
the numbers are still lower. I mean, luckily, we have had a little stretch of hot weather again, but the numbers have been decreasing.
Really?
Yeah. So there might have been a little uptick. I haven't talked to Kim or mosquito control this past week, so there may have been an uptick on Wednesday sampling. But if I don't get a call tomorrow by noon, we're good. That's always when they call.
By the way, nice job, you and Tony, coordinating all this mosquito district spraying and staying on top of it.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Yeah, we're great, right? And then the last one, I had to track this. It was really funny. Somebody told me I should do it.
Absolutely, I don't care. Wasn't every day, though.
It was almost every day.
It was not.
So yeah, so the chairman and I had 18 conversations since the last meeting.
18.
Hey, Sometimes
We
it's,
get along really well.
how are you doing?
I know I've called 18 times.
What can I do to help you?
No,
Sometimes it's that.
Larry says to me, you have to get a life.
That's
what it is.
right. That's right. But
I had to edit it, that was really good.
that's fine, I could care less. I really don't care. I didn't call you on the weekends. Once I did, actually.
Yeah, you did.
We had a problem we had to deal with. Do you know,
Brian, a question on sort of planning. This is to the month, so it's not germane to the month, but one of the priorities we set up when we sort of set priorities for the year, we looked at two things. One was the housing inspection program,
Yep.
and one sort of the rental, what do we call it, the pre-inspection.
Yes.
And the other was emergency training. It's been quite a while since we went through the NIMSIC?
NIMS and ICS.
ICS.
I did have an update for that as well. I haven't done anything on the first one yet, but I will work on that. And the second one was the ICS training. I have a line and a trainer for ICS, it's called ICS 402. It is for boards and for town managers, mayors, selectmen, city councilmen on incident command training at this level. So I do have a trainer in the area I can tap into. I'm going to ask you guys if you guys are interested in doing that. I can find out what his schedule is and see what we can do. I don't know if you guys would want to do it at a meeting or if it would be maybe some afternoon, maybe.
I think the fact that we had 3 hurricanes hit U.S. territories within the last month or
Yeah.
so really emphasizes the importance of good practices.
Okay. So I did talk to somebody. They're actually out of lunch now. So he was working at the state. He just started working for our host community, who does they hold all the funds for our regional coalition. He's a trainer. So he's willing to come out. Just need to find out when.
If you get us some logistics of
Okay.
what happens, like what the time is, that kind of stuff.
Just to give us a little time to plan ahead, I definitely would make it a priority.
Okay. That sounds good. I can definitely do that. I was supposed to reach out to Phil and talk about the rental program. I didn't get a chance to. I will definitely make an effort to reach out and say, okay, this is what we're looking at doing. I've mentioned it to my superiors on at least 2 occasions and haven't gotten any definitive no or yes yet. But I will push on that. Maybe even give them a draft form of a local regulation that we could pass and see what they think about it. I do have a draft written. I can give it to you guys next week, see what you think, and critique it, then I can maybe even pass it up. Okay.
Just to look at.
Well, probably would be good to introduce it at a meeting rather than, whatever, but
Like I said, you guys, you get to take a look at it just so you know what is the meat of this thing.
We can go, you want to go over it next meeting, Tom? Like we can-
you're the chair, you.
No, I'm asking you, no, but, this isn't a one-man show.
Well, I know what you got set for next month. The presentation depends how long it's going to be. We can have it and sort of put it on the agenda and see how it goes.
Sure. Yeah, I can definitely do that. You wanna
That's a good
add that
idea.
on the agenda?
Good idea.
Okay.
So Brian, Carolyn's report,
Yes.
should we wait till she's here and she can just we don't need to go over 2 full reports. Do you want to highlight a little and then have her expand on next month, or what do you want?
I'll have her expand more next month.
Yeah,
Literally this month has been scheduling flu.
yeah,
Getting flu vaccine, getting everything ordered, getting her supplies lined up, getting her MRC volunteers, getting everything scheduled with multiple times and days at the police station for all their shifts, the fire station, senior center, family flu clinic. She met with Shara Barzak at the school department to get all of that taken care of. Pretty much been her month, and will be her next month as well. But
Yeah.
it's a lot of work. She's doing fantastic, and we're well underway into flu season. We're getting everything wrapped up there.
no, she's doing great.
Yeah, I'll have her do more of a presentation next month to give you more of a summary as to what has happened, numbers. I think we did over 50, 55 today at the senior flu clinic, which is great. Then she's got all the other ones scheduled for all the different areas in town too.
So it's still maintaining a good number of supply. We talked a couple years ago about all the local pharmacies doing these no copay or whatever flu vaccine if you have a card. That we haven't, that it's made maybe a bit of a dent, but hasn't washed it out completely.
It hasn't washed out completely. It has definitely dropped the numbers down over the past, I'd say, 5 or 6 years when more pharmacies started to do it. But the problem with it back then, when it first started, was we were getting all of our vaccine from the state, so it goes from the distributor to the supplier to the state to the locals. We weren't having the family flu clinics until November. People want it early. Now we have it set up so we get it directly from the manufacturers under a state contract. So it chops out a month of travel time. So we're now getting it just around the time, maybe a little bit after the pharmacies are getting it. So the numbers have kind of stabilized and we're not losing that clientele to different pharmacies and their primaries.
Brian, these, first of all, the whole purpose of these, when I met with Brian and we talked about it on the telephone, really is because I didn't have any real idea as to what was happening, the various aspects of the department. And we've all talked about this throughout the years as to, you know, what actually happens in our health department. What do they run into, what type of situations and so forth. So we came up with this as just, it wasn't to get, you know, more paperwork, because I hate paperwork, but it was really to inform the board. I'm sure you send this to the various officials.
I just finished this afternoon, so I didn't even have a
Yeah,
chance.
no, but I
to-
mean, you know, so that they're informed and they can see the importance of what our department does.
Mhm.
And they can see that maybe some of what we have to talk about at board meetings
Yep.
and vote on or decide or a regulation change. So this is really the meat of what we do, and then it comes here for
Mhm.
decision time,
Exactly.
where we can all vote on it. And that was the only purpose of it. And I didn't know all this occurred. All these years on the board, I just never had this much detail before. And
Just
that was the purpose.
The mundane day-to-day operation of the health department. I mean, with all the aspects that the board oversees, there's a lot of nuance that happens at our level with, I mean, she's been learning a lot the past 7 months. Yeah, there's a lot of nuance to what we do, a lot of different jurisdictions, a lot of different administrative things that we have to take care of to carry out your policies. And then, of course, we work for the residents, so we help all the residents with anything that they have with, I mean, you had some lady on the phone crying today. So, housing issues, people selling their house into Title V, people adding on to their house, need to expand their septic system, people that just have general complaints about restaurants or their neighbors or, you know, whatever it is, noise, rabies, so, pools, yeah.
Yeah. But I just think it gives the various bosses in town and our colleagues in town an idea of what our department does.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people, and I don't even think others in town realize the depth that we go into as a department
Right.
to monitor what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't
Sure.
know all this.
Chickens, beavers, pigs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Beaver complaints, backyard chickens, pigeons,
Pigeons.
What else?
Pigs.
pigs.
What was the other town clerk paperwork? That was, you're finished with your?
Oh, yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
All right.
Oh, let's see. So you guys need to take one, pass them down, sign it,
Oh,
and then you guys sign it, take your booklets, and pass the signature pages back. Is this the same as the booklet?
Actually, no, that's not. She said it's actually updated. It's almost like
Thank you.
more-
This is the addendum?
Yeah.
Okay.
oh,
Give
yeah.
this back to you.
Yep, give the signature page back, and then you guys have the book, but then there's an addition to the book.
The appendix at the end there.
Yeah, so,
Or his, doesn't really change,
take the regulation and the,
If people are looking out there at what are we doing, this is the open meeting law guide
and then.
And conflict of
everybody
interest
gets
for
regulation
municipal
and the
employees.
addendum. Pass it down.
Regulation. I got it. So you take two off the top.
Okay.
Thanks, Tony.
Oh, I see, okay, October 6th. Update.
What, I can't take a bribe?
You can, but it's illegal.
You just can't be caught.
No, there's no payoffs allowed.
No.
Well, that's an update.
You can only take the equivalent of your salary, is that it?
Before I forget it.
Oh, okay.
The vaccinations.
Thank you.
So, do you want to, Brian, go over the, just to let the people know about what's coming up vaccination-wise, like I just mentioned?
You want to go ahead and read it? You want me to read it?
I can read it, it's fine. Let's see.
Yeah, I gotta find mine.
Elder flu clinics. A limited amount of high-dose flu vaccine will be available for ages 65 and older. Bring all your insurance cards. From 9 to 12 at the senior center today. It was Thursday today. Wednesday, October 4th. Thursday, October 12th. Wednesday, October 18th. And then the next clinic will be at the senior housing Monday, October 2nd. The Bingham Building, 10 to 11 in the morning. O'Connor is 11:30 to 12:30, and the McCabe is at 2 to 3. Brian, is this, they're not going to remember this, is this online?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
good, okay, all right,
We've put out flyers, we've,
okay, good.
door postings over the buildings that they live in. Yeah.
So, and Thursday, October 5th, the Moretsky Building, 10 to 11, Fountain, 11:30 to 12:30, and Folds from 2 to 3. Then, Town of North Andover 2017 Family Flu Clinic is Wednesday, October 18th at the North Andover High School Fieldhouse on 430 Osgood Street from 5 in the afternoon till 7 in the evening. Influenza vaccine will be available for residents of North Andover. Children must be 3 and older. So again, save time and visit the town website at www.northandoverma.gov for access to the insurance and consent forms. And again, bring all your insurance cards. And one more. Town employees, get your flu shot at the nurse's office, 120 Main Street, the ground floor, by appointment. So call extension 48403 or email actually this is on the webpage, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, fine. Just go to the webpage and take a look. Friday, October 20th and Tuesday, October 24th from 8:30 to 12 noon. That looks like it's it. Did I get them all?
Yep.
Okay. Hang on just for a second. Okay. I have some things I wanted to go over. First, is there anything anybody else wants to cover? Bring up? We'll go down to communication announcement and discussions. And under here is educational series, flu clinics we just talked about, agenda discussion, which we'll talk about. We're going to hold off on the septic discussion for now. But I'll leave it open if anyone wants to bring anything up. The one thing I wanted to go over was I'm trying to inform everybody as much as possible and be as transparent so that we're all up to date on everything. So I wanted to talk about the, this is on my sheet that I typed as far as, these are just some of my notes that I'm using as references to talk about. You have it in your booklet there. The educational presentations, we have all discussed this over the last year. So this is a group decision that we all made to try to expand what we do as a department and as a board, trying to be more informative and more, present more educational material to the public hopefully that'll be a way that they can improve their own health and overall the public health. Let's see. So I wanted to let you know, when I met with Caroline and Brian, we talked about ways to promote the guest speakers. I'd appreciate any assistance and offers or ideas you can give, because, again, I need everybody's input, really, to try to do it. Ways to promote guest speakers, including our own Board of Health doctors, Frank and Tom. What Brian and I and Caroline, we talked about social media, town webpage, signage at Town Hall and the Senior Center, et cetera. Maybe North Andover CAM. We're just trying to get the word out. It would be nice if we could get an audience so that they would, if they knew there was a presentation, they could actually, we can put the agenda out more in advance, and they could actually hopefully plan on it or watch it either live streaming or maybe after the fact. On North Andover CAM, you can always go there a day or two later and it'll appear on there. But this just gives us a way to educate the public and inform them a lot better. So if you can come up with any ideas tonight or whenever, this is the discussion, guys. It's all of us.
Audience member who would like to speak.
Yes, I recognize. If you could.
Afternoon meetings so that we don't have to worry about being night blind.
Could you come up here and just speak into the,
Which one? This one?
Any of them?
any of the microphones, and just state your name, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Rosemary, oh, this one's not working. Rosemary Broder, and I'm a town resident. And my suggestion is that people who are elderly, a lot of them have night blindness and can't come to these meetings. I'm fortunate that I can still do this. So what I'd like to see is maybe a 3 or 4 o'clock meeting and let us all hear about it early enough to get here. Because a lot of people live right in town here and can walk. For these special meetings, make a public hearing. Not normal meeting time. 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon would probably work.
So you mean like when we have a guest speaker who's going to
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Give the person enough, availability and let the town know we might show up.
That's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to get, like we know in advance. Like January 25th, I was going to go over it. January 25th, we have Dr. Megan Bernstein, dermatologist at Northeast Dermatology. She's going to come here and give a talk on skin cancer.
So can she do it in this early afternoon time? Because otherwise, again, you're going to lose anybody who can't drive or who doesn't want to do the snow or whatever we're doing in January.
Well, we'd have to have the Board of Health hearing at the same time, and that's very difficult to do. That's why we have this set up on.
Not for every time, Larry, but maybe you could try it out, see how it flies. Try it once. It might work.
Well, it's something we'll think about. But there is the option, though, of going through your computer. I believe we have live streaming available, plus you can watch it the next day, too. But even live streaming, what I was going to talk about also, bring up, is maybe we can have live participation where people can email questions in during the talk.
Okay, I also was trying to get Leah over at the Senior Center to broadcast at the Senior Center on television in the room, your meetings after the fact. And it just seems like there isn't enough time in the day for her to do that. That's why I'm suggesting to do this and let people figure out how they're going to get here on their own. Early enough in the day. Try it once. It might work.
There could be a Board of Health sponsored meeting without there being a meeting where we have to declare it and have our own agenda. It could just be a Board of Health sponsored program.
We can do that. We can definitely do that. We don't have to have a quorum to have somebody come in and do a presentation. We can do it at the Senior Center.
Plus, these meetings are live, and they are repeated, I believe, 4 times in the
Correct.
course of each month.
Yes.
Yeah.
The meetings are live on TV right now?
I know, but
Okay.
again, if you're watching this on television You're not actively sitting in the room participating. I'm trying to help you get us who may have either handicaps or night vision trouble to the meeting. Trying to get you so you can see
Right.
us and we can see you and interact one-on-one.
Thank you.
That's a good,
Yeah.
that's a good point. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, let's look into it further.
Yeah. So, ways to promote, ways to get the word out about what we're going to be doing as a group. I appreciate any comments you guys can have. This year, we had the Water Department, Northeast Mosquito District. Next month, of course, I spelled it wrong, it's TEC, T-E-C, coming down to Baydoor Air Quality for Wheel Liberator, the testing. Also, in the spring of next year, we have Melanie Callahan. She's a local physical therapist at Northeast Rehab Hospital. She'll be coming in talking about, which all of us at one point have, muscle pain, muscle weakness, what to do, what to look for, and so forth. So, and of course, we have our own Board of Health members, Dr. Frank McMillan, Dr. Tom Trowbridge. And so, really what I wanted to find out from all of you is, how long do you think we should have the presentations and discussions? What topics? How many throughout the year?
I think there's countless topics we can touch upon. My recommendation would be if somebody is willing to come in here and talk, give them the time that they need. So Dr. Bernstein's coming in. If she wants to talk for half an hour, I'd say give her the half an hour. I did reach out to GLSD again. They had, when I talked to them this past summer, they said, we're really busy right now, but we'll be willing to do it in the fall. So I reached back out, see if we can get them to come in, talk about the sewage treatment plant and how their operation works. I've got a list of ideas downstairs in my office. Anything you guys want me to start looking into or reaching out to, let me know. There's countless topics we can use.
I think a half hour is a good time. You should be able to say everything that you want to say within that period of time.
I would think so.
I know we've had some recent meetings that have gone much longer than that and kind of drag out. Half hour is a good time.
Okay, perfect.
Half hour is a good time with some time for discussion and comments, I think works the best.
Yes.
You know, you do a formal presentation, get it to a half hour, and spend another 15 minutes talking. That usually is. It fits with attention span, and if it's a good topic that people really like, you know, they can talk about it longer.
Tom, do you agree?
That would be
Yeah, I
the
think,
long end.
yeah, 30 minutes with 10 minutes Q&A or whatever, I think that's a pretty reasonable time. But I think it is a good idea to try some afternoon sessions. I think it's a great idea to sort of, but if we're going to go to the energy of bringing some outside speakers in, we're going to put them in a venue where they'll get some town interaction, so. We could promote it, even go to, these are sort of a little more passive promotions here. If we were to promote it through the senior center, or, you work for something in town, what do you do?
I'm retired.
Good for you. But through the senior center, or if there's a coordinator at these housing places where we're going into flu, there's some sort of a coordinator there that help the nurse set up these clinics, that they can suggest that there's going to be a topic germane to that group.
And one of the things that we
There's
talked
several internists that live in town. Somebody may come in and talk about arthritis.
That'd be a great topic. One of the things that we did talk about at our meeting with Caroline was social media and going through different avenues, such as the library, the school department maybe, things like that, and reaching out. A couple different Facebook groups that are dedicated to just in town here. North Andover has an official town, Twitter account we could use. So things like that we do have access to, and we want to start trying to rope all of those different avenues into getting the word out. And I think that's what we're starting to figure out right now, and getting more technically savvy and getting access to these.
or you can take one of these programs and take it to one of those places. The library has an ongoing series of things, you can sort of plug into that. If people are used to going there, rather than trying to get them to come
Yep.
somewhere else, whether it's, any number of different places, or we had the Board of Health meeting down, the new place down 114, a couple years ago.
Well, we had it at the superintendent's office.
No. The new place that's, I'm sorry, senior moment. I don't remember the name of it. Pretty big, you were, maybe it was with Susan.
At
On
114?
114?
On 114, the newest facility, that pretty big one that's on the right side going out of town.
The school building?
No, Boston Hill?
Yeah, what was?
Brightview.
what was-
Sutton, no.
Brightview?
Brightview.
Yeah, we had a meeting there.
Oh, okay.
With Susan, because she was having some other meeting with a group of them, and so we met there. You don't remember that? They serve drinks, so you
I'm
probably don't.
I'm thinking about it.
He was probably in the hospital.
That's a
I
big,
think I
that's
was there,
a
but-
sort of a special, special interest group. So again, if we had, that may have interest in, again, just say arthritis, if we were to sort of sponsor something in there, that puts us with them rather than having them to deal with coming here somehow.
Okay, these are all,
I like that, it's a great idea.
yeah.
Excuse me, but this is the senior center building. Remember, we come here every day behind this building. That's where we have lunch every day, and a lot of us seniors get together. And a
So
lot
we
of
can
us
go into the
walk.
senior center instead of
Yeah.
asking them to come up the stairs.
Yeah, they have a nice meeting
Well,
room.
What I'm saying, yeah.
Sure.
We're there, and they're done by 3:00. This is why I said if you had a meeting over here, 3 or 4, anybody who was at the senior center all day could just pop over, and they need to take an elevator probably. Or you can pop over there the other way. But we need notice, or you won't have an audience.
Good,
Mhm.
thank you,
Yeah?
thank you. So if you can think of any other ideas, how many meetings, we only have 12 Board of Health meetings a year, so how many presentations do we want to have? We can't, can't flood the boat. I don't know how many, that's why I wanted everyone's opinion as to how many we should have and what would be reasonable and not overkill.
Now that many of the septic issues are being handled by the department, that does free us up to an extent. I know in the past, an inordinate amount of our time had been spent on septic.
Yep.
And meetings were not as educational or as informative as we would like them to be going forward. So I like the idea of having a speaker here on a very regular basis. I'm not saying every month, but perhaps every other month. We'll see what's on the agenda.
See what we
Okay.
can,
Yeah.
see what we can do,
Yes.
it's not that difficult to get a speaker, but again, it's planning. And-
Well, I would kind of suggest, again, at the first year of this, not to make too much extra work, and I think probably to, you think there's a long list of topics, but when you start getting those topics checked off, the list gets small pretty quickly also. I found that very early on when I used to write a paper, like a 2-paragraph thing for the Citizen, it got pretty tough to get ideas after a while, so you don't want to use up your resource so quickly. I would suggest maybe on a quarterly basis, every 3 months would be a good plan, but then pre-plan them so you have something to plan for rather than, well, if something comes up, that's a harder way to do it, and you can't address these issues that she talked about.
It's reasonable.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Sounds great.
Frank, good to you?
It's fine for me.
Okay, so quarterly, okay. Yeah, no, that's why I wanted to find out, get the board's opinion as to,
And you run out of your list too quickly, and then you're like, well, what next year?
well, we'll just start over again. Same
Start
list.
over again.
Yeah, well,
Okay. Okay, we already talked about what the original meeting with Brian and Caroline.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
on that topic, when you sort of think of topics and stuff, we do have, Lowell General has the Women's Health Center is here on 114. Has some contacts there, we could, work on that also.
Oh, that would be excellent.
Plus
That
the
would be
fact that all of
fantastic.
us at one time or another have brought up topics of interest and have spoken about it. So it's not just other people, it's us.
Yeah.
I like the way that we've handled certain items in the past concerning general health of the community, and I just hope that we continue as such.
Yeah, good. Like, I'm going to talk about a couple things tonight, but please feel free, like at a meeting, if you read an interesting article that would benefit people hearing it out in TV land, and, it would be educational for us. That's what I do. I just highlight some of it and quickly go over it. It's just more of an FYI or something interesting. So if you have something you read and you want to present it, just bring it with you and do it. Nothing, under just general discussion or something like what we're doing now. I think it adds to the quality of what we're trying to accomplish. So we already talked about our original meeting. We talked about focus, promotions, organization, responsibility, and stance in the community. I'm not going to go over the priorities list now. I put that on my little piece of paper to talk about, but just to save time, we'll cover it another time. I just wanted to make an announcement. We have 4 Board of Health members now. One of our Board of Health members, Ed Peace, has retired his position. So I wanted to wish Ed the very best. It was wonderful knowing him and working with him for, I think, 5 years. Ed was on the board. And I congratulate him for everything he's done to help promote our town and the board. So thank you, Ed. Anyone else have anything they want to? Or are you going to be forced to listen to me for another couple minutes?
Well,
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
yeah.
All right.
So tell them to keep it short.
All right, I'll keep it short. I will. A couple things, since this is vaccine season. I'm just going to read part of this. It's not that long. It's from the CDC, dated September 13th, 2017. Influenza vaccine slightly modified for the new season. So I'm just going to really highlight it. So the influenza vaccine components for the upcoming season have been slightly modified from those used last year. This can be very technical. CDC review also discussed recent regulatory actions, including 2 new licensures and 1 labeling change. Afluria quadrivalent was licensed by the FDA in August last year for adults age 18 and older. Basically, I want to give you their current recommendations for age and the current recommendations for these drugs. And again, these aren't recommendations from us that you would use these. These are just new ones that you might see out there and the doctor may offer to you or the pharmacy or wherever. Flublok quadrivalent, licensed by the FDA in October 2016 for adults ages 18 and older. The age indication for Fluvaval quadrivalent from Biomedical Corporation in Quebec was extended last November from children aged 3 years and older to infants older than 6 months, so they lowered the age. Children 6 through 35 months may receive Fluvaval quadrivalent at the same 0.5 ml dose per vaccine as is used for older children and adults. I'm not going to go too much into dosing because it really doesn't concern everybody here. CDC also emphasized that pregnant women can receive any licensed, recommended, age-appropriate influenza vaccine. The agency reiterated its recommendations about the use of live attenuated influenza vaccine. Now, last year, there was a nasal spray available. So the nasal spray was found to have low effectiveness against influenza A, H1N1, in the United States, leading the CDC position to suspend use last year, so it's not available now. So just a couple more things on age. Since 2010, the CDC and its Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices have advised routine annual influenza vaccination for all persons aged 6 months and older who do not have contraindications. For the 2017-2018 season, quadrivalent and trivalent influenza vaccines will be available, as will inactivated influenza vaccines, which will be available in a trivalent and quadrivalent formulations. One other vaccine. Recombinant influenza vaccine will be available in a trivalent and quadrivalent formulations also. So you don't have to remember this. I'm just letting you know that some of the ages have changed and what's been approved in 2016 for the 2017 season. So I thought that would be apropos since we were talking about the flu vaccinations tonight. And really the last thing I want to talk about, then we'll talk about the agenda, is I came across an article in, I think it was U.S. Pharmacist. Drug Topics or U.S. Pharmacist, I didn't write that down. The 7 top craziest drugs in the pipeline to be approved. I found this very interesting. Here's one drug, and its abbreviation is MDMA, and the chemical name is 3,4-methylene dioxymethamphetamine. And for all you technical people out there, it's ecstasy. So I just wanted to tell you this. The FDA just granted a breakthrough therapy designation for MDMA, or ecstasy, if you can believe it. The agency is working with a multidisciplinary association for psychedelic studies. I swear to God, I'm not kidding. Phase 3 trials of MDMA, assisted psychotherapy for patients with severe PTSD. So basically, it's in a trial, phase 3 trial now for people with severe PTSD. So it can encompass, PTSD isn't just when you're involved in extreme violence, and PTSD can be from anything any trauma in your life that could cause it. Phase 3 trials of MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for patients with severe PTSD. The first trial will begin next spring, involving 200 to 300 patients in the United States, Canada, and Israel. I found this part interesting. In phase 2 trials with 107 patients, after 3 sessions on ecstasy, on ecstasy-assisted psychotherapy, 61% of the patients no longer had symptoms of PTSD. I found that remarkable. Just 3 sessions with MDMA. At a 12-month follow-up, 68% no longer had PTSD. Now, these results haven't been formally published yet, but they will be. So right now it's not completely official, but it's out there. Another thing I found very interesting for lactose intolerance, there's a drug, and this is just the name of it, RPG28. Don't know what that stands for. This I found very interesting. Stimulates the growth of lactose metabolizing bacteria in the colon, which reduces the gas production, which in turn relieves the symptoms of lactose intolerance. A company by Ritter Pharmaceuticals is testing that right now. And this is the first time researchers have been able to identify a change in the specific bacteria species as a result of a course of treatment of a specific disease. So I found this very interesting. Let's see, here's something is part of this, and we're almost done, so sit tight, everybody. The vitamin biotin, formerly known as vitamin H, now called vitamin B7, is now in phase 3 trials for the treatment of progressive multiple sclerosis. Very, very interesting. MedDay Pharmaceuticals is currently assessing high-dose biotin. Now, please don't go out and take high-dose biotin. This is in early clinical trials. We have no idea what the dose is, so I'm letting you know that this is in the pipeline, and I'm sure it'll be by prescription only based on what I've read. But I found this very interesting. In one pilot study, 23 patients, 21 patients, that's 91%, improved clinically. 4 patients with predominantly visual impairment related to optic nerve injury improved significantly. So this hopefully will have some promise. Currently, there is no approved drugs for progressive multiple sclerosis. So very interesting. This is an interesting one, and it's already out there, actually. Medical marijuana. GW Pharmaceuticals is testing a product called Epidiolex, an oral solution of pure plant derivative cannabidiol. Drug is currently in what they call a phase 3 trial for multiple indications. And I'm going to not mention those indications right now because it's in trials for it. FDA also granted expanded access of this product, allowing physicians for emergency access to the drug for patients suffering with intractable epilepsy. So it is actually available in an emergency basis. Let's see. All right. This is kind of interesting. They're using the polio vaccine combined with the influenza vaccine. They're altering its molecular makeup. They're modifying it to go after tumor cells. So I found that very interesting. And this hits home with me, this next drug. This is number 6. Take Series Therapeutics. They brought the first regulated, clinically approved bacteria-filled pill to treat diseases associated with disruptions of the microbes inside your gut or in the human body. So basically, Series Corporation, they're not saying what the bacteria is that is involved, but they do mention fecal transplant as an analogous to it. They do say that their drug, SER 109, contains an ecology of bacteria spores enriched and purified from healthy screened human donors, used for the treatment of recurrent C. diff, Clostridium difficile infection. C. diff is one of the top 3 most urgent antibiotic-resistant bacterial threats in the United States and results in 29,000 deaths per year. My stepfather died of it, so this does hit home. I wish this was available a few years ago, but it wasn't. Fecal transplants were, but it was more something that they were still looking at. Frank, you know more about this than I do. So this is one that hit home with me anyway. And let's see, the last one in the pipeline, I thought this was interesting. Mass General Hospital has developed a process that may eventually lead to give anyone the ability to tan with just a simple application of a liquid. The researchers, they bought a molecule, whatever that means, that inhibits a particular enzyme which turns off melanin. And then what they did was they altered the molecule, which causes it to stimulate it again. I'm really shortening the technicality of this. One of the compounds tested made brown spots indicating that it was able to reach the melanocytes, which are the cells below the skin that produces the darkening of the skin, in the skin and spur melanin production. The compound would work even in fair-skinned people who do not normally tan, potentially lowering their risk for skin cancer. However, it is not intended to replace sunscreen, but to enhance its effects. So that's really some of the top 7 drugs that are in the pipeline that are very unique, very different, that you normally would never hear about. And in fact, Tom was telling us earlier of a sunscreen dispenser in Newburyport.
You know, they're dispensers of those wall-mounted things where it has a little squirt out in the bottom, and you can I suggested we could maybe consider that as a public health measure where I've seen these a couple places around lately. Like I said, I saw this in Newburyport. There's one just was in the Eagle Tribune that a family did it in Methuen in honor of their son who died of melanoma. So we'd looked around for various health projects, and this seems like a relatively simple and straightforward one without needing a lot of extra requirements and having to jump through a lot of hoops to do it. I mean, you could envision 2 or 3 places in town that are public gathering areas. It would be pretty nice.
So it begs the question, we all know that sunscreens are effective at preventing sunburns, which are very unpleasant. Are they really effective at preventing melanoma?
Well, I was looking, there's a site that was associated with the Methuen one. They were linked to it. I couldn't find all the information. There is some discussion about that, but melanoma versus other skin cancers, there's some of basal cell in terms of that, having fewer sunburns
Right.
is helpful with that.
Squamous and basal cell cancers are reduced. I'm just not sure that melanoma is.
Well, it'll be an interesting discussion in January with Dr. Bernstein, our dermatologist, so that's really good. The only thing left is really the agenda. I think I asked if we could make a change in, what did I ask you, for November? We could change a day that week if it's possible. If not, we'll keep it.
I won't be here if it stays on a Thursday.
If it stays on a Thursday?
No, if it stays on that Thursday, I can't make it. I'll be traveling that day.
Okay.
We're gonna look for the week after, but not on Thursday, because it's the night before Thanksgiving, or earlier in that week. I didn't need to change, we're gonna look at the calendar schedule for this room to see what was available.
Okay.
We'll do that in the morning, and we
How
will,
much notice do you have to give for a meeting change?
48 hours.
40 hours.
Yeah. So we'll look at the calendar tomorrow for this room, for the meetings coming up in November. We can change it from the 16th to another day. Either the week before, either the week after or earlier that week. How does that sound?
I'm good any day except that day, and Frank's not good that day either, so.
Right.
um,
So we'll change it.
It's a pretty tight timeline. The October date is at the very end of the month, the 26th, so then to the 16th, unless you do it a different day to move it up, you're talking about another meeting 2 weeks later, maybe.
Or the week after. But before, we moved to the 16th because of Thanksgiving. We just had it that week of Thanksgiving, but earlier in the week versus Thursday night.
What about moving it to the 30th, and then I guess you have the same problem in December?
Correct, because December is Christmas.
Are we going to have another board member by the next meeting? I'm just concerned about having a quorum.
I'll make the meeting. If we can't change it, I will be there. I'll change what's going on.
With this much notice, we can change it and pick a day that works for everybody. We'll get the calendar of this room, find out the openings, and then we'll...
Send out a mailer?
Yep.
Does it have to be on a Thursday?
It does not.
What day were we using before when we had to move to the superintendent's building?
Tuesday, I
Was
thought.
it
Tuesday.
Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Tuesdays aren't ideal for me, but I can still do them.
I like Tuesdays.
Well, just for a change, just for when, if possible. If not, I'll be here, so.
Okay.
I'll just change what I got going on, that's all. So we can do this by email, if we can't.
Yeah, when we do
Figure it
that.
out now. Frank, before, does anyone have anything else they'd like to bring up?
I think the septic discussion, one thing that I did want to touch upon,
Yeah.
is we had talked about, previously, you would have septic contractors or the engineers come in for any variance requests and things like that. You guys have been having me do that in-house for whatever variances they're going for, whether it's groundwater separation like we talked about, or reduction in the offset to wetlands or something. Are you guys okay with me still doing that in-house? I wanted to bring that up to the board, make sure you guys are happy with the way things are going. If you have any questions, I know you had asked about the offset was one of the big ones for you. But whatever you guys want me to do, I am willing.
I brought it up because that's what we were, Mill River, that was their
Yeah.
number one concern.
Mhm.
And we've been through this all over all the years. If we should
Okay.
still, if it should come before us, or if, you know, what's your thought on it?
I'm comfortable Brian taking it, and again, if there's an issue of concern, that's part of my background, you can always give me a call.
Okay.
Want to leave it as it is?
Sounds
or-
good.
I leave it as it is.
Okay, so we don't have to vote on it, we'll just leave it.
Okay.
We'll let you maintain what you're, I don't think we don't need to vote on that, do we?
No.
No,
Okay.
we're not changing anything.
Frank, I was going to ask you, if you don't mind, since the C. diff really hits home, can I ask you a couple questions on it? And also for, I'm sure it's been out there too, people watching, how often you might see it in your practice, your gastroenterologist, and, you know, have you treated it? And, you know, is there something new that they're doing to help reduce its overall, how hard it hits, I guess?
Well, I guess the first thing is you want to isolate the people who have it so that you don't have to worry about treating it, you're preventing it. Not everybody gets C. diff, although we do see it in the community. Some people do pick up community-acquired C. diff. Many of the people who get sick with C. diff have an exposure to antibiotics, so they're in a nursing home setting or a hospital setting. And so those people are uniquely vulnerable. I've taken care of people with C. diff for almost 25 years, and I've never had C. diff. And, you know, I'm good about hand hygiene and things like that, but the spores get everywhere. I mean, I think that you have to have a susceptible host, and you have to have an adequate inoculum. So you need enough bugs, enough spores, and you need to have a host to have some susceptibility to infection. As far as what's new, there's not really much new. The whole idea of fecal transplant has been around for a long time. It's been gaining popularity. And then the FDA in 2014 put the kibosh on it and said you can't do it unless you meet some very stringent criteria. So it kind of, we don't do them very frequently. I did have a patient who was very sick and had really a good need for it, and had really failed everything else. And I was willing to treat her, except that she had such bad valvular heart disease that she was unsafe to sedate. And I sent her to a cardiologist. They said, no, you can't sedate her. And so I got a little bit resourceful, and I found a friend of mine who told me about these capsules they have. So you can buy capsules from this company called Open Biome, and went through the protocol on how to take them. But the problem when you take capsules is there's an aspiration risk. If you, for some reason, vomit them up, you know, and you aspirate, that could be the death of you. It turned out that this patient actually did not. I actually had ordered the capsules, had them on site, ready to supervise, and you have to actually supervise them while they do them. And it turned out that she expired right before we were going to do it. So I think she actually succumbed to her valvular heart disease more than anything else. But you know, there are drugs out there that work. The problem is not so much bacterial resistance. The problem is recurrent infection. So you treat people typically 7 to 10 days later. They'll call you back up and they say, "I've got it again," and invariably they're right. Because they feel good for you know 5 to 7 days after discontinuation of the drug, and they get sick again. And so you can test them. I usually just treat them again with another course or a longer course of antibiotics. It's still the mainstay. It's quite you know, the FDA asserted regulatory authority over this. It's difficult. You have to have 3 medication failures, and you have to really document that you've tried everything that's available before you get to go to anything that's considered to be experimental.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. Thank you. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Meeting adjourned.